Yeah, so it's great to sit down, Jon, after we've been
Yeah.
talking about this for a while now. We obviously have a long journey together, which we'll share some of the highlights from that. But our real goal is really to look at sort of the journey we've been on, our desire to stay on the entrepreneurial journey, but do it in a little bit different way. Obviously, you're still involved in some entrepreneurial ventures, and when I proposed to you this idea of starting the foundation and having you as one of our founding board members, I thought the real goal was to take what we understand from those lessons of our entrepreneurial journey and bring them into the foundation as part of creating a support system for young leaders around the world who have this real resource gap, right?
Yep.
They're missing, they need capital, they need mentorship, they need support in so many ways, and especially from an early stage perspective, like when an idea is germinating.
Yeah.
Right, and so part of this is to leverage our sponsorship with the Soundboard Impact Foundation, which has really been built as the evolution of charitable work that I've been doing for many, many years now, to really continue to support and mentor young people, young leaders around the world, real change makers around the world. And so it's exciting to have that organization as the next frame of reference for our work together.
Absolutely. And it was kind of interesting for me because I'm at a part in my life where, I'm so grateful for the stuff I've been able to accomplish and do. And I'm grateful for the people that have supported me. And you've been a huge support for me and we've known each other. We're talking 26 years, crazy, quarter of a century. And I'm sure it's going to go on and on. So we'll be talking about that in 50 years. But ultimately, I was at a point in my life where I really felt like I've accomplished these things, and yet at the same time, I want to be able to give back. I want other people to follow in some of the things that I did or experience some of the things that I did, and maybe I could be of help and support in that way. Whether it's investing or a charitable donation or working with people that really don't have those chances to step out from their world where they are. And I think what you've put together and what you've created with the Soundboard, what you're creating with the Soundboard Impact Fund is exciting for me. So I'm like all in. I'm excited. Thank you. I really am happy to be on the board. I thank you for that. And I'm looking forward to this next stage in my life, which is kind of interesting as I move forward. Yeah. It seems to fit really well.
Yeah, so it would probably be helpful for those who haven't, don't know us as well, right? Because obviously we're just starting this new journey of doing these kind of conversations together, and we do plan on having guests along the way. Really good impact stories of people that we've supported and worked with over the years. Primarily, those guests would be from for the not-for-profit side, but I think even entrepreneurs that we've supported on through the angel fund, the venture fund that we can share, that we've been co-created with other partners over the years. So I think it would be good maybe go back, and so people have a context for where our perspective comes from. We met in 2000. I'll share a little bit of what led me to start at that point Soundboard Consulting, the first of the Soundboard entities. But where were you at that point when we met back in, I think it was the summer of 2000?
Yeah.
And maybe share, a
where
little bit about
mentally,
that.
Or where was I physically?
Well, mentally, we'll go in, that may be a different
That's
topic.
Whole nother.
We may need an afternoon for that.
Yeah, I might need a therapist here as well.
Yeah. But where were you, from a business perspective, where were you on your professional journey at that moment in time?
I was, just real basic. I had come out of 3 failed businesses at that time. I started being an entrepreneur at 22 years old. Started my first company, and they were kind of interesting. They were like these high risers and then fall, high rise and fall. And they were very similar situations that happened to me through them. it was always a weakness I had, whether it was financial or operational. And, you know, to turn that around now where I've had 4 successes, 4 companies I've actually founded and had success, plus another exit. So I've had 5 exits building companies after those three failures. But during that time, I was really kind of in the middle of one of my first businesses that I was building up, and I was really kind of lonely. There wasn't a lot of people to talk to when you're dealing with entrepreneurial issues, that like things that just, you know, how am I going to make payroll? How am I, you know, nobody's going to lend me money, which I took that out of my play right from the beginning. And for me, so it was really like, how do I need someone to talk to. I need to have someone to talk to, not a therapist. I need somebody that understands my business. And I ran into you, and you were kind of in a fork in the road in your world, and that's how we met.
Yeah, it's interesting. And so 2000 was, right, a very important year for both of us in many different ways relative to our life journey and professional journey. I had just left the trading floor, right? I spent 12 years as a commodities trader, and probably 9 or 10 of which were not healthy. Right. You talk about, you know, from a psychological perspective, it was not good. Definitely did not align with what was important to me, but I didn't have that level of insight, right? We were trying to build security, trying to build some level of wealth.
Right.
That could become intoxicating, you know, being in an environment like that. And when I left the floor, I had just gone through this exercise around core values and what was important to me, which was a lot of it was about freedom and respect and impact and growth and honesty. And that was my foundation for starting Soundboard, which was started with CEO roundtables, which is where we crossed paths when you started participating in one of those roundtables, which was intended to, you know, support entrepreneurs who are lonely on that journey, and then use that along with one-on-one coaching to sort of be part of the, you know, informal advisory team for the entrepreneurs that participated. So it was really an interesting moment for me. I was coming out of a really bad time. I left the floor cold turkey one day. It was, you know, when I tell this story, people who know me know when I tell the story, I typically cry when I tell that story. Yeah. Because it's a very emotional moment. Sure. Somehow I'm not right now. I'm keeping it together right now.
You're not crying right now. I've known you for
You've seen me tell the story many times. Yeah. But I think what's interesting is, you know, at that moment in time, having left being in the city, in New York City, and really focusing, building the business in northern New Jersey, and have much of a network. I started networking. I started meeting these amazing entrepreneurs who were doing these very creative things, building something. And you were kind of, and obviously as time has shown, the quintessential builder, you know. And so when you look at what gave you you talk about some of the failures, what gave you that resilience despite the failures, to keep pushing harder and harder, knowing, or maybe not knowing, maybe there was a little bit of less doubt in those. When I met you, you were, because I remember being in that original office you had in the building where the business, that business school was and so forth. Right. And I remember you were just like, things was just starting to accelerate.
I started out crawling from the wreckage. I went through those 3 failures, and what was interesting about that is, you know, I was depressed. I was majorly depressed. I had to shake my funk. I had a 2-year-old child at home. Probably at the time she was just being born, around 98, and I really felt that I needed to get out and stop feeling sorry for myself. There weren't many people to talk to. Like, what I really enjoy about this time in the world, there's so many people to talk to. There are successful entrepreneurs, but I'll get into, you know, where I learned most of the things and how I got through them. But it was crawling out of there, and for me, it was survival. Literally, the beginning was total survival. It wasn't about building wealth or anything. It's about paying my bills. right? And buying a home and those things that were so important to me at that time. So even before I wanted to create, I needed to create something that would create money and give me a paycheck. But at the same time, what actually happened, I fell in love with what I created, and I fell in love with the idea of building a legacy. And and that was just, it wasn't happening when I met you, but I was facing that direction. I was finally getting a paycheck. I was finally doing those things. So that's kind of where I was. But I was afraid. I was looking up the mountain, climbing the mountain, looking up the mountain, going, I'm never going to get there. No way. It's not going to happen. It's overwhelming. And, it's a good lesson, right? When you're crawling up a mountain, how not to look all the way up and say, oh my God, I got to get to this destination. So what I learned really early with you, working with you, is like, let's take it day by day. Let's get a couple steps in and so forth. So that was really exciting for me to have that base. But yeah, I wasn't in a great place when I met you, but I was searching, which was a good thing. Yeah. It wasn't like I was giving up.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? I always talked about small shifts
Yes.
in behavior, right? Rather than
and you wrote
eating
the book.
the whole
book,
elephant, one bite at a time, right?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting that was really what kept you going. And we'll explore this topic, I think, in more detail along the way. But it's that, what is it? I think we spend most of our life pushing towards securing the future, right. And sometimes that future is today, right? Being able to pay the bills. Sometimes you have the luxury of looking out a month, 6 months, a year. Yep. So it's interesting when to even have the consciousness to know when I'm only looking out today, I'm in survival mode. Yeah. Then that's where my focus is. It's okay, right? And so having a successful day, rather than worrying about a successful career or life. Sometimes we're looking big rather than, a little bit more, you talk about strategic long-term thinking and so forth. But sometimes long-term thinking is, the end of the day, paying the bills and doing what you need to do to survive.
Yeah. Yeah. I look at it like, now I look at it when I talk to young entrepreneurs and I talk to young people that are working on ideas and so forth. It's so hard to look forward. Looking forward is, you're really looking at ambiguous things. You don't know what's going to happen. So what you're doing is really, taking those steps, and each day knowing that you're going to keep going. But you're right. Early on for me was like, let me make some money today, so I could pay my rent, pay for my car. And that was my legacy for that day. Right? So you can call that at the end of the night, I go, woo, I made money today. I can go to sleep. Now I got to do it tomorrow morning. But
let's build off of that, because I think that's an interesting sort of lesson learned. And whether or not you remember this moment or the movement towards this moment, which was when you went from that survival to today, the timeline of today, this week, bills to pay, to I can see something out 6 months, a year, and my behaviors are going to be towards something that is beyond today. Yeah. Do you have a memory of that
I think it was
moment where that shifted?
Yeah, I think it was a slow evolution, to be honest, right? It literally started day to week to month, right? And going and projecting things in my business, projecting things in my personal life. What are the things that I wanted to accomplish? So over the years, it has become an evolution. Not a revolution. Didn't happen fast for me. It really happened very slowly, up until I sold my first company and really had wow moment that now I do want to create some kind of legacy for myself. That was 16 years ago. But those are the things. But it didn't really happen fast for me. But it slowly happened. Just like slowly shedding my skin a little bit, and the fears going away. And
Yeah, no, it's interesting. I'm trying to think for me when
Yeah.
I started, Soundboard cold,
Yeah.
right? I hadn't really no network.
No.
And I've talked about this, with people all the time. I talk about it, which is, the importance of building a network of relationships, and
Sure.
then, of investing in those relationships, because it's not about the next sale. It's really about the next relationship that opens the door to avenues and relationships that you wouldn't have been able to explore before, but it's through those relationships and the trust that you build in those relationships.
Sure.
It took me really probably 2 or 3 years. I started the business in 2000 till like 03, 04, where I had that revelation of stop trying to, sell and try and just go out there and find good people.
That's interesting.
Find people who aligned with your core values. Find people who were able to sell themselves, because how can someone help you build your business if they can't even tell their own story?
Mm-hmm.
Right? And people who are highly competent in their field, because if they're going to recommend you somewhere, then you want them to be competent so that the people that they know say, oh, well, if Jon is recommending him and Jon provides whatever, service
Right.
at a high level, then Richard must be one person that does that also by
Yeah.
nature of the affiliation.
Sure.
And relationship. And it took a long time. And it was really once the catalyst of those relationships
Right.
really said, okay, now there's a long-term future here, because there are these people who are going to help, we talk about the pushing the rock up the hill, right?
Yes.
So that now they're on the hill with you, helping you push the rock up the hill.
Right.
And it's not just you in this lone journey of pushing the rock up the hill.
Yeah.
And you had it with your team,
Yeah.
right? At NHA, your team, you take all those individuals, in their roles,
Yeah.
an interesting group.
Yes. Interesting group.
Of people that I had the opportunity to work very closely
Yes.
with.
Yes.
And but they were really, as a team, allowed you then to leverage your greatest strength rather than you always having to do everything.
Exactly, and that's where the learning came in. The learning came in to realize I couldn't do it all myself. I happen to have, a good amount of ADHD. Had it as a kid. Always had smart kid in school, but didn't do well. Not great grades. Daydreamed most of the day. But the bottom line for me was when I was able to find. So these are things that you learn, right? Able to, those first 3 businesses, it was all me. And then I finally got to a point going, this is getting ridiculous. I'm making the same mistakes. Now I want to do something different. And what I want to do different is to be able, and it didn't just occur to me. It was also an evolution, but I was like, wow, I found this person that could do this that I'm not really good at. And I found this person who in one way is really smarter than me at this. And slowly I built a team of people. And that's where my success came, was understanding that. You helped me understand that. And again, all the consulting work you did with me was help me grow my team. I remember at one point you said to my team, one of the people on my team, like, you have to understand Jon. And ask me, Jon, you're talking about this. Is this something you really want me to do, or are we just having a conversation about it? So they learned how to work with me, and you taught them that, which was really exciting. And yet I learned how to teach them as well, based around the stuff that you. So it was so a lot of this stuff is evolutionary movement in my life, but they all pay out. And I think that's kind of the most important thing of what we talk about is like everyone has to realize they got to have the patience, they got to put the efforts in, you got to put the time in, and these things can happen to anyone. And we'll talk more about our stories, but I know from where I was, I don't think a lot of people would put their money on me, to be honest.
Yeah.
If I was a horse in a horse race, I'd be the clunky one that wasn't going to get there. So,
But passed him on the home stretch.
yeah, I guess so. But whatever.
Yeah, so maybe let's say a couple of other pieces in terms of our journey that led us to where the work with the foundation. So another big highlight was when in 2012, in 2010, Jonathan joined me in the consulting and coaching side. And in 2012, we started the Angel Fund together, where we put together resources from our network, who had accumulated some dollars, and we started without any formal experience. Obviously, I
think it was me, you, and Jonathan in a room just discussing what is this angel investing concept.
Yeah, what is this thing, early stage investing? And we built that portfolio. Some of it still matures. We had a couple of exits. There's still some really interesting value. It's been longer than we expected, but the real learning there was the opportunity to take our experience, right? Not just the dollars that we had access to now as part of a fund, but our experience to help those early stage entrepreneurs get out of their own way, reach their full potential. Obviously, as their businesses grew and they raised more capital, we were a small investor.
Yeah.
But we have some great relationships that have come out of that over the years. And then that led ultimately, well, I guess 9 years later in 2021, where we launched a second fund, which was about 5 times the size of the first fund, the Soundboard Venture Fund. So Soundboard as a brand, started as the coaching and consulting practice, which continues in small part. The Angel Fund, the Venture Fund, and now the Impact Foundation. So it's an interesting evolution that we've put ourselves on together. That has been kind of a cool thing.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
the one thing I wanted to sort of tie that all together was, we spent this journey to try to secure our future, right? And we always talked about ROI, right? The return on investment.
Right.
We always talk about that from a business perspective. And I think this transition, especially for me, where I'm spending a great deal of time right now on the foundation and building the foundation, the roots for it, the operationalizing it, is really the return on impact,
right?
Versus the return,
I like
the
that.
ROI.
ROI.
Return on impact, because the return on impact is really where the ripple effect, what comes from you drop one pebble in the water and all the waves that come from that. And when you can do that with people who don't necessarily have the same access to the marketplaces that maybe our venture back or angel back marketplace has more access to. But when you take young leaders around the world, in the U.S. and around the world, who have less access and who are also very passionate about social impact, it's been an interesting evolution on that.
I really like the ROI, return on investment, return on impact. It's kind of like that's a real interesting theme for me going forward in my life now. Is I want to have impact. I want to have impact on people. I want to have impact on society. If I could do something and move the ball forward, and I give you all the credit in the world, all the stuff that I didn't even know you were doing. Believe it or not, I mean. You didn't talk about it, and you were traveling to other countries and working with young leaders. And I kind of, and of course being friends for so many years, but we had our worlds that we were tied into. In the early stage of our relationship, you were a full-time consultant with me. I even brought you in to as an outsourced chief operating officer for my company, NHA, that I sold back in many moons ago. 2009. And so we kind of, even though we've always stayed close as friends, you were doing your thing, and what really has been amazing to me is what you've been doing. And when you invited me this summer to come out to Vermont for this leadership program, I thought it was like, I didn't really understand it, and we could talk about it more, but I didn't understand at the time. But realized you were working with young people from all over the world. Forget just the United States. There were some of them as well, but you were working with people that had, whether it was entrepreneurial ideas or literally life-changing things that they wanted to do to change their country. One guy was into creating glaciers and on mountains, and which I still don't understand to this point, but ultimately, they were some brilliant people. I mean, I spent those few days with you up in Vermont this summer, that was incredible. So,
Yeah, it's interesting. I think your story of creating something from nothing is going to be a story relative to a lot of these young leaders, as we said, who are maybe resource deficient or have an idea that is. We talked about the glacier marriages. We can get into that another time. Maybe we'll have Zarek. Maybe we'll have Zarek join us as a guest at some point in the future. But I think the way you created the certification out of something that did not exist, that story, I want to, over time, leverage that story for helping people believe that just because no one else is doing it,
right,
doesn't mean it's a bad idea. I mean, you can talk to any great entrepreneur, the famous entrepreneurs, the front cover entrepreneurs, right, who are thinking way outside the box. And, when we were kids, there was no diagnosis for ADHD or ADD. Or people being on the spectrum and what that means from seeing things different from other people,
right,
and the power of even those things that may have been put into a box of a challenge or disability, but the power of it, the power of different ways of viewing the world. I think maybe give us a taste of that, because I think I think that what you did in creating those certifications in the allied healthcare profession, and the story of what led you to that, is a wake-up call to people to say, be observant. Be observant of what's happening right around you.
Yeah.
And so talk about that, because I think it's a great story.
So it's a real, so I'll set the tone that I had just come out of a business that failed, and I was desperately looking for a job. My grandmother was was ill in Florida, and I flew down to Boca Raton, Florida, to go see her in the hospital. And I walked into the hospital, and I walked in to see my grandmother, and she had this huge black and blue mark on her arm. And she was telling me it hurt her, and I touched it and it was warm to the touch. I went out to the nurse, and the nurse said to me, oh, yeah, your grandmother got her blood drawn last night, and they must have just kind of, the blood leaked into the vein. We do have her on an antibiotic or whatever. She has a small infection, but it's being taken care of, and that was that. And I went back to my grandmother, talked to her, and then went into the elevator to leave. And it was just like, talk about like defining moments in your life. The elevator was closing. I mean, elevator was closing. Somebody's hand stopped the elevator from closing, and the elevator opened up. And another nurse got in, didn't say anything to me. The door closed, and she looked at me. She goes, I want to tell you something. Your grandmother, that person that drew your grandmother's blood last night, because I heard you having this conversation, that person never drew blood before. They worked in the cafeteria. We were short. We brought them upstairs. We wanted them to join our department, and we're teaching them how to draw blood. And your grandmother was the first person that person ever drew blood from. And I just kind of sat there. I'm like, oh, okay. And went back up. She was taken care of. She was on an antibiotic. But bottom line was, I started thinking in my head, wow, those people aren't trained anywhere. I actually asked the nurse, I go, don't they go to a school? What, a phlebotomist? What the hell is that? So I literally was an outsider, and I figured out, hey, how can we train these people? And I happened to knew a guy that lived not far from me that was a doctor from India, and he was like trying to get his doctorate in America. And I asked him about phlebotomy, and he was telling me how he learned it in school, and a lot of doctors don't do it or even learn to do it. And so not to make the story too long, basically what happened is I created these programs, training programs for them. And that was the launch of my first business, which was this career schools that taught them. And I built a few of those schools and started finding other I call them orphan paraprofessional jobs that didn't have licensure or certification, and basically started training. And then the big idea was, instead of just training these people, why not create a test that they can take that shows they have the skills to enter the field? And at that point, I started getting into pharmacy technicians, people that assisted pharmacists. I got into medical assistants, people that were working in a doctor's office, medical, the phlebotomists, of course, EKG, and then even billers and coders, people that are doing administrative work and clinical medical assistants. So I created this market of a separate business. I had these schools, and I had this market of a separate business that was actually we call it a third-party endorsement organization, because I didn't even know what certification really meant until I really understood it. We ended up converting into a certifying agency, became one of the first certifying agencies ever to exist in the healthcare field that was a for-profit. Because I set it up as similar to a nonprofit. We had boards, and we had development of exams and testing, a little exam that you have to take. So I created this whole world that didn't exist in the past, and it's still out there. It's the largest in the world, and Blackstone, the big private equity group, own it now. It was purchased from me by Providence Equities and bought by Blackstone. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's an important story to share from the standpoint of entrepreneurship, right? From the standpoint of seeing a gap in the marketplace,
right,
and understanding. People would say, "Are you crazy? You have no credential. What is
Absolutely.
Your background? What?" Yeah. Right? People are always looking, to criticize.
My uncle
right?
said to me. My uncle looked at me and goes, "Who are you to create this?"
Right.
Like he was mad at me. He said, "What are you doing now?" And I explained it. He was like, well, you don't have nothing to do with medical. What are you talking about? So it was kind of an interesting thing. But being an outsider is not a bad thing. It was actually a good thing. And creating something out of nothing. I think ultimately what entrepreneurs really need to look for when you're even building a business or coming up with an idea, it's not always what everybody needs. It's what you're anticipating they're going to need.
Yeah.
If it doesn't exist, they don't know they don't need it.
Yeah.
It's like the phone that can play music, right? We didn't know the iPhone was going to do that, and guess what? We all need it now, right?
Yeah. Yeah, and I like the story because I think those are the types of stories that we want to be able to bring into our conversations. And we have our own stories, but there are so many of those amazing stories. And I'm just as you were talking, I'm thinking about this gentleman I just spent some time with. I just came back from being in Africa, and part of it was pleasure on a safari, but I also went to visit some of the different projects that we've been working on. And I got to meet this one gentleman who you might remember from the program last summer. His first name is King, and King's in Zambia. And he came, took a bus up to meet me in Lusaka, in the capital of Zambia. And what King is doing is he's creating an app that connects there are a lot of unemployed doctors
Right.
in the country. And there are a lot of people who don't have access to medical care. Okay, well, that's a big gap.
Yeah.
Seems like there's a need to sort of bridge the two. And what he's been working on is an app that's almost like an Uber-style app that would attract and connect the people who have a need with the people
Amazing.
who have the time available and obviously are unemployed. And,
Right.
for a small fee, they can provide the services. There's a lot of complexity with it, in terms of some of the rules and regulations and all of that. But there is an interesting, right, seeing something that's broken, seeing something that's missing, just like your grandmother, right, and what she was experiencing. You're like, wait, that doesn't make any sense. And then you hear, by happenstance, oh yeah, that person was was in the cafeteria yesterday. What? And then you think about it and you go, okay, well, I think there's an unlimited amount of opportunities.
Yeah.
If you can keep your eyes open, and then you need, obviously you need to be able to sell the concept. You, in those early stages, funded it yourself. You were grinding it out.
Yeah.
You didn't take on third-party investors. I think
Nobody would give me money if I tried. So.
But I think sometimes people jump very too quickly. They want to accelerate growth so rapidly.
Yeah.
And they think that's the way to success is rapid growth versus really looking at the business model and making adjustments and investing back in. I think in this space for a lot of these young entrepreneurs around the world that the foundation it has been focusing on and wants to focus on going into the future, or people who don't have the choice to raise dollars to accelerate. They really do have to create, some real grassroots effort, to build something that then becomes believable, and then they, between grants and some seed capital and, and some, money that's available to them locally, then they can start to, build off of that early concept. But I think that's an inspiration, that story.
Yeah, it's an inspiration. It's also what inspired me was the passion that the students you had in Vermont were all after. They all had a very interesting passion for what they did, and it was interesting in that healthcare business, in the mental health, and in the medical business. For me, it started becoming a passion. Because all of a sudden I started pointing, and once you start making purpose to your life, it's so important. My purpose was, first of all, creating these certifications was saving lives. It was saving patients' lives, because there were a lot of the stuff
ROI,
we were dealing with.
Right? Impact.
Yes, it was saving patients that were getting infections in hospitals were going down because we created a process on how to draw blood. We literally rewrote the books on how to draw blood, what kind of tubes to use, what gloves you need to do, the process of it. There was no real process. So to me, that was giving back. Also, we were, from the schools I had, we were getting a lot of people from unemployment, welfare to work, and so forth that were going through training, and we were getting them jobs. Mm-hmm. So these two businesses that I started almost simultaneously were doing all these great things for people. And sometimes tragedy makes you want to do things. And you know this very well, and you knew my brother. I had a brother who had mental health issues and died from suicide. And it was really painstaking thinking about that. It was sad because 6 months from his death to selling my business, just the events that happened, the highs and the lows, and the highs were so weirdly mixed into about a 6-month, 8-month period. And you helped me again, and I thank you. Mm-hmm. You helped me again, introduce me to a guy who was in the mental health, behavioral health space. And I got involved as a partner and built out 2 companies in the behavioral health space. And that was for therapists working with school-age kids for suicide, depression, anxiety. We became, we had 6 locations, schools, and then we sold that business and actually created another business called Thrive that went into school districts, put therapists in the school districts. So I could feel so good about what I did, and I thank you, because it stayed within my passion. All of a sudden, I started becoming, I call myself a social purpose entrepreneur, because all of those businesses had that piece to it. There was a social purpose. Again, saving lives. I mean, I could tell you how many lives, not the exact number, but I could tell you every day in that behavioral health business, both of those companies, we were saving lives. We were literally saving or changing lives. And that was another piece of my puzzle that makes me look back and go, I need purpose in my life. If I don't have purpose, who am I?
Yeah, and I think that's maybe we'll tie together our first conversation with that. And what I wanted just to share, I wanted to fill in. You've referred to this program up in Vermont last summer, and I think it's worth and important to note. So this organization that I've been involved with for a long time, for over 15 years, called Miracle Corners of the World, who has their main offices in New York. They have affiliates in Africa, which is what brought me to East Africa, in Zambia, Tanzania,
great organization,
and Rwanda. One of their keystone programs is a Young Leaders Fellowship program. As a matter of fact, my understanding is this year we have 10,000 applicants for the 30 some odd available spots for this 1 year fellowship program. And then we bring back mentors, previous year's mentees to be involved. So it's about 40 people out of, somewhere close to 10,000 applications. Yeah. And it starts, we fly them all in from around the world. There are some from the States also. And they spend almost 2 weeks we take over part of a college up in Vermont, Champlain College, up in Burlington. And I've had the opportunity for years to go up and do some training around leadership and self-awareness, around emotional intelligence and growth mindset and so forth, which has been my funnel to meet so many amazing young people around the world. But as Jon, as you shared, being in that room, and just seeing the power and the intellect and the drive and the desire to have impact, going forward, it's energizing, and it gives you hope to the future. It gives you, just kind of a different perspective on the world. And it's interesting, one of the mentees, this woman, Thandi from Botswana, who also came up and visited with me when I was in Victoria Falls a couple of weeks ago in Zimbabwe. She still remembers, those initial exercises. They were life-changing. She was 19 then, now she's 22. They were life-changing.
Right.
So you don't know how many people you've impacted. You just don't. Whether that's saving someone's life and they're there for their family, or whether they view the world differently, or they have more confidence. Which is, I think is the exciting thing that we have continue to have the opportunity that lies ahead for us in this next stage of the journey.
It all goes back to a movie that was out in the 1930s. It's a Wonderful Life, right? And you don't realize the people you impact if you were not on Earth. And it's corny, but I watch it every year. Every year with my daughter, and we love it because it reaffirms that we all have a purpose, and things wouldn't be the same without us in it. And the odds of us even becoming who we are now is so small. Think about if one relative didn't meet the other relative or whatever. We wouldn't even exist right now. So life is a miracle, and it's great to be able to share that with people and let them know they're special. And nothing bothers me more than seeing people feel like they're just underserved and they're not, and they don't have that ability. So, what you did at that event, and I will tell you, not just because I want to make you happy, I really do. When you finished your program, I was like, we're done already? Like, that was a couple hours, that was a whole day, I think. And it was exciting. The whole process was exciting. And I was so into it, and I spent a lot of time talking to the kids, one-on-one, and it was just amazing. And I kept seeing, wow, if I was growing up in their world, we had a lot of opportunities. We grew up in a really interesting time. We had a lot of opportunities. Not saying that everything was roses and we had to work hard at it, but these are really disadvantaged people because of their country, because of where they've grown up, whatever, chances of getting out of the village, all that, and to see them make their mark, and I would say they were at their age, they were light years ahead than I was at that age.
Yeah.
So,
Well, good. Well, this was a good start for us, and looking forward to continuing our conversations. So,
absolutely.
yeah, great. Thanks, John.
Thank you, Richard.
Yep.